Your CMA sucks. It does, but it's not your fault. The traditional CMA hasn't fundamentally changed in decades, and it's unscientific. It's easy to manipulate because it only has a few data points to compare with, and it rarely produces a home valuation that you can feel confident in. Our Bulletproof CMA process has been used by over 10,000 agents, and our new tool has helped thousands of agents completely change the way they value homes. My name is Levi Jones. I'm the founder and head coach at Guerrilla Realty. And although we've tackled our Bulletproof CMA before, today I want to address the top 5 questions we get about our process and our tool. By the way, we do a 1-hour live training on our full Bulletproof CMA process. We flip the script on the traditional CMA with a full 50-point statistical analysis that will beat any Zestimate or RPR valuation. And we want you to be able to check it out completely for free. We'll give you free access to our Bulletproof CMA tool for life, as well as the full methodology so that you can complete a real solid CMA in less than 15 minutes. All you have to do is like this video, share it with another agent, and then comment shared below, and I'll send you a private link to the full resource. Here are the top 5 questions we get about our Bulletproof CMA and that I'll answer in this video. Now, one of the first questions we always get after the Bulletproof CMA training is, okay, but where do I actually get my baseline valuation? Because before we can adjust for appreciation or comparables, you've got to start somewhere solid. We'll break down exactly where that number comes from. Another big one we hear is, how do you figure out the appreciation rate? And that's crucial because if you don't nail this, your CMA can drift way off base, and the data sheet served by your MLS may not be good enough. The good news, there's a simple, repeatable way to calculate it yourself every single time. And the scenario that freaks people out the most is, what if there are literally no comps? Maybe it's a one-of-a-kind property or the data is just thin. Don't worry, we've got a step-by-step strategy for when the usual CMA playbook isn't an option. Another question that comes up constantly is, how far back should I go when I'm looking for comps? Because if you go back too far, your data is stale. But if you go too shallow, you might not have enough to work with. So here's the simple rule we use to strike the right balance. And finally, maybe the most practical question of all is, how do I actually communicate this valuation to my clients? Because even if you've nailed the math, if you can't frame it in a way the customer understands and trusts, the deal falls apart. We'll talk through the framework and make it land. We'll start by answering the question, where do I get the baseline valuation? And first, quick review of our Bulletproof CMA process. I would recommend that you check out our full video that we've done on this process a few months ago. But there's basically 3 valuation methods that we use. First, we start with adjusted baseline, active comps, and closed comps. Okay, that may start to seem like a traditional CMA, but it's not. We don't do the thing where you pick 3 closed, 3 active, throw out anything you don't like, and then make some weird adjusted magic based on millage and finishes and stuff like that. Instead, we're going to do a full 50-point statistical analysis, and we start with the adjusted baseline. Now, this is our CMA tool that you're looking at right now, and the adjusted baseline method is going to basically take some solid starting point, a valuation that we know is derived from another source, and then it's going to adjust it forward using the appreciation rate in your area. We'll get to that in a minute, but we got to start with a baseline value that we feel confident in. And so where can that come from? It can come from one of 3 places. First, it can come from a recent sale. So a sale within the last 3 years, okay? It can also come from a recent appraisal. Sometimes if you pick up an expired listing or something like that, you might have had an appraisal done recently, in which case you can use that as a baseline valuation. And then finally, and this is probably the most common for most of our users, and quite frankly, most of my CMAs, is I use a local tax assessed value. Now you might go, well, the tax assessed values are way off. That's okay. This is just one data point. And usually the tax assessed values are closer than you think. And so unless you live in one of those localities where they freeze the tax assessed values until a new sale happens, which are few and far between in the US. Most areas have updated tax assessed values to do property taxes on. And so we could use that as a baseline. All you have to do is go into your property tax records and look at the most recent tax assessed value. And if it's updated every year, which most areas are, you want to go when that valuation was established. So, for example, in my area, they update it every year, but we would go back to when that evaluation. So, if they just rolled it over for the last 3 years, fine. We would go back 3 years, and that would be the valuation that we'd use. Once we have that baseline value, we can put in the date of valuation. And this is going to be important for calculating appreciation rate later. But we're going to put in the actual baseline value and the date of valuation. Again, this is just one data point that we're going to use in our statistical analysis, but we start here. So that brings me back to the next frequently asked question, which is, how do I calculate the appreciation rate? In fact, this is probably the most popular question that we get asked. I think it comes from maybe a intimidation from math, or maybe just not really understanding what an appreciation rate is. Appreciation is simply comparing an old value to a new value, and then expressing that change in valuation as a percentage of the new valuation. So, and we do it on an annual basis. So again, that may sound way too mathy for you. Don't worry. Our tool does most of the work. And whenever you are calculating the appreciation rate, we're doing it and we're going to apply that adjustment to that baseline value. So we're not just taking a tax assessed value and dumping it into the formula. We're taking that tax assessed value and we're adjusting it via the appreciation rate in your area. Now, you probably want to calculate this on your own and not just go by the MLS data sheet that you're handed every month. And so the first thing that we would need to do is come up with the date of valuation. And so this is whenever this tax assessed value was created. Okay. If you don't know the month and day, just put January 1 and the year that it was created. And then you're not actually going to type in the appreciation rate unless you just happen to know it. You've already calculated it before. What we're going to do is we're going to actually calculate it using the tool. And so the tool is going to give us a starting date range. And I would simply go into the MLS and search for the city that the subject property is in, as well as the date range. And I would search for all properties in the area that were sold during that date range and come up with an average sale price. I'll show you how to do that in a minute in my local MLS. My MLS is probably not the same as yours, but it might be similar, and it'll give you some idea of how to find this starting sale price. And then the ending range, it gives me the same date range. So the current year, and I'm going to do the same search, only use the current year instead of 21 through 2022. And I'm going to enter in the average sale price and I'm going to hit calculate. So let me show you how to do that. Now, remember, we don't know the actual appreciation rate of the subject property, but what we can assume is that this property appreciates about the same rate as the properties in the city or area that we're looking in. And so I have my MLS pulled up, and so I would look for the starting date range, January 1, 2021 through January 1 of 2022. I'm looking for solds. And specifically, I'm going to go through the dates that it just gave me. And so we'll go to, I need to go forward. There you go. January 1, 2021 through January 1, 2022. I got a whole year encapsulated. I'm going to click, I got to type in my city. This is the city of the subject property. And then I'm going to hit results. I'm going to hit stats. And now I have average close price of $199,951. Okay. You're probably thinking, wow, and you're absolutely right. Absolutely low priced area for this subject property. This is just an example. Now, September 11th, 2024 through September 11th, 2025 is my next range. So I'd go back to the criteria. Again, it takes no time at all to calculate it yourself. I'm going to click clear. So September 11th, 1 year ago, to September 11th now. This is the current average sale price in my area. And we go results, stats, tabular. Again, I use Matrix MLS, or my MLS is Matrix. So the new average close price is 270,119. 270,119. I would type that in and I would hit calculate. So over the last 3 years, or 3.7 years, there has been an average appreciation of 8.48%. That is then just applied to the baseline valuation of 293,000. See, it took me just a couple of minutes. I calculated the appreciation rate, and I know that that's accurate because it's based on the MLS statistics and not, hey, there's a black box. I think that the statistic's right. I've actually looked up the average sale prices in the area. The third frequently asked question that we always get is, what if there are no comparables? What if this is just an interesting, unique property and I can't find what I need? Now, first of all, this is going to be a difficult thing in any CMA process. Remember, we're talking about relative. So in a typical CMA, you're going to draw a big circle around the subject property and you're going to look just within that circle. And this is sort of a faulty way to look at it, because if the circle is a half mile or a mile wide, you might be pulling in neighborhoods that are not at all comparable with the subject property. In fact, I got screwed by this myself on a recent refinance I did on my home, where they brought in neighborhoods nearby that were not in the same school district, that had higher crime, way different demographic, and ultimately lowered my own home valuation. And so we don't want to do it that way. Okay. So first we start with a broad match comparable. So we're looking for a match on beds and baths, a square footage range, and then we're looking for a match on the subdivision. Now, if the subdivision is small or it's not a lot of movement in that subdivision, you might still go, well, I don't have any comparables. And so here's the beauty of this method. You can pull in subdivisions that are similar, that would meet the same criteria and that would pull in actual comparables, but maybe in a completely different area of the city or market that you're in. The guiding question that I want you to ask yourself is, if I had a buyer who was interested in this subject property and suddenly the subject property just was no longer available anymore, where would I take the buyer to, where would I take them next? There's nothing available in this neighborhood. Where would I take them next? If it's not a neighborhood, if it's a rural property, okay, what data points would I start to put, or search criteria would I put into the MLS to find them other properties? We wouldn't just go, guess we can't find them. No, we would keep looking for our buyer. And so this is where you get to use your market knowledge and be a little bit creative. Again, I'm not trying to bring in properties that are not at all comparables. In fact, the exact opposite. I want to be creative in bringing in properties that are comparable. And so whenever we're looking for active comps, we're going to need at least 13 active comps. Later on, we're going to need 37 closed comps. And so the way that we do that is we expand our range. We don't draw a circle. We bring in similar neighborhoods, and you can look at the age of the neighborhood to look for similar neighborhoods. That's one of the sort of tricks that I use. And you can also expand the beds and baths a little bit. Now, for example, someone who was looking for a 2-bed, 2-bath is probably not going to be looking for a 5-bedroom, 2-bath. But someone who's looking for a 4-bedroom might also be looking for might also be willing to look at a 5-bedroom. And so that's where you bring up this imaginary buyer and you bring in multiple areas. And of course, if you still are having difficulty finding comparables, we want to help. We've been doing this for many, many years. We'd love for you to reach out to us at support@guerrillarealty.com. Even if you're not a Pipeline Pro Tools member, we'd love to help brainstorm with you and help you find the right comparables for your market. Another question we get is, how far back should I go? And course, active comps, we're not going back at all. And once you have your 13 active comps, it means you've expanded your neighborhoods and your reach to an appropriate level. And let's say you're still having difficulty bringing up enough closed comps. Because remember, we're looking for 50 total data points and we need probably 36, 37 minimum closed comps. The more we get, the better, though. And so, typical when you're looking at closed comps, you might not go back farther than 3 months or 6 months. But with our tool and our process, you can actually go back as far as you want. And the reason is our tool will actually calculate the appreciation rate and bring those valuations forward. So for example, instead of 3 months, and when you put in your average sale price, you could go back 36 months or 48 months. And then the same process we used before to calculate appreciation, we would actually calculate the appreciation from 36 months ago to now, or 48 months ago till now. And our system basically takes a normal distribution of the data and appropriately adjusts it using the appreciation rate of your area. So we may have data point or comps and data points that go back many, many months, and yet we're still able to make them current, which is really the problem with going back far. It's not that it's inaccurate data, it's inaccurate for now, right? So if you can bring it forward at the appreciation rate, you could go back as far back as you need to get the right number of data points. The more data points that we have, the lower our margin of error when we're doing any sort of statistical analysis. So here's the final question that we get, which is, how do I explain this to customers? And this is maybe the most important. This helps you close the deal. It helps you appear knowledgeable and confident about your valuation to the customer. And so when you get to the end of using our Bulletproof CMA tool, it gives you this nice printout or this nice report that we can share with customers. Now, I could either share this via link, I could export it to a PDF so I could print it or send it to them via email. But you may even be confused. What in the world does this mean? And so the first thing that I would say is you definitely want to go ahead and brand this. With the Bulletproof CMA tool, you can basically go in here and change the branding. You can change your contact information, the colors, the logo, so that it's your company, right? And then we have something we call the reasonable range of value, which is home prices are elastic. They're not like a stock price where you can go and look up exactly what it is. The reasonable range of value is the range of value where most people would say both the seller and the buyer are getting an okay deal. If you were to go above the reasonable range of value, you would probably say, well, the seller's getting screwed and the buyer's getting over. If you were to go below the reasonable range of value and that home was to sell there, you would say, well, the seller's getting a steal and the buyer's getting screwed, right? But anywhere within that reasonable range of value, you would say, hey, both sides are okay. Okay. And so that's what's going to be right here at the top is this reasonable range of value. So when we explain it to a customer, we never give them a single number. We say, hey, here's the reasonable range of value that your home could sell within. Now, these little people here indicate how many showings or what kind of demand we would need to drive in order to attain that valuation. So if we're talking to a seller, we would say, hey, if we wanted to sell it on the low end, we would really only need to show it to a few people before someone snatched it up and grabbed it. If we wanted to sell it in the average or the middle of the reasonable range of value, we would need to show it to an average number of people. And then if we wanted to sell it to the high end or sell it at the high end of the reasonable range of value, then we would need to we need to show it to a large number of people in order to attain that valuation. This usually coincides with days on market. Okay, so unless you have an outside force driving demand, which that's a video for another day, unless you have an outside force driving demand, more than likely the days on market increases the number of showings. The longer it's on the market, the more showings you get over time. Okay, so our strategy is to value the home and list it at the high end of the reasonable range of value, and then we apply that outside force to drive demand so we can get many more showings in a short amount of time. Again, that's a video for another day. I'll actually link our ultimate listing presentation above. But this is the way that I describe it to the customer. Now, if they go, wait a second, I wanted some number, if they were looking at this report as an example where I say, hey, I think we should list it at 380, and that's the high end of the reasonable range. And they go, hey, I thought we were going to get 450 for it or some other crazy number. Okay. What you don't want to do, don't make the mistake that many agents make, which is, oh, this guy's an idiot. They're unrealistic. They don't know what they're talking about. Instead, you ask questions like, let's be curious. What? Okay, maybe I missed something. Tell me why 450 is the number that you came up with. And they might go, well, we dropped 50 grand into a pool, or our neighbor's house down the street sold for XYZ. And the reason why you want to start with questions is because they may have you may have missed something, number one. But number two, when you actually know the reason why they think that their house is higher, you can actually address those reasons. You can say, well, look, pools don't valuate this the way that you think that they do. It's not a dollar for dollar valuation here. The same thing with the neighbor's house down the street. They actually have 2 more bedrooms that you do. I'm not sure if you were aware of that. And then you can address it in a calm, data-driven manner and get the list price that is fair and is accurate for your valuation. I appreciate you sticking with me till the end. We're on a mission to raise the level of agents in this industry and help them win. When you have a home valuation you feel good about, not only does it help you serve your clients better, but it helps you secure new clients because they know that you know what you're talking about. Now, remember, we do a full 1-hour-long training on our Bulletproof CMA process, and you already know the answers to the hardest questions after watching this video. We'll share all our scripts, free access to our Bulletproof CMA tool, and the entire methodology to knock out CMAs just like this in less than 15 minutes and that you actually feel confident in. Just like the video, share it, and type shared in the comments, and I'll send you a private link to the training for free. Now, we put out new videos like this twice a week, so make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. See you next time.
Look, we've doubled our real estate business 3 times since 2019. If you want the full breakdown, exact scripts, step-by-step processes, and our brand new tool, drop a comment below.
No gimmicks, no paywalls. We're sending it completely free because we know it works.
Just type send it in the comments and we'll get it to you ASAP.
And if this was helpful, stick with us. We're dropping more strategies twice a week. Hit subscribe so you don't miss what's next.